Hi, and welcome to the Maybe I Can podcast. I'm your host, Debbie Weiss, and thank you so much for joining me today. If you haven't already done so, please hit subscribe, follow, download, write me a review. You know, all the things that all of us ask, because that's the only way that this podcast grows. And hopefully, the things that you and I talk about can get to everyone who needs to hear these messages. Because let's face it, we're all in this together. And I feel as I decide each week what I'm going to talk about, and I've told you this before, I really reflect back on what's going on in my life currently and think to myself, is there a message here for me? And then if there is, well, chances are it applies to you too. So here's what's happening today, and here's what we're going to talk about. Why is it so hard to trust our own decisions? Now, maybe for you, that's not a problem. But I gotta say, for me, it absolutely is. And I had this realization this week, and really, I thought that I was wrestling with a decision, but it turns out I was wrestling with myself. And I realized that I have a habit of making decisions and then immediately questioning them. Not sometimes, but a lot. And once I realized that, it's kind of once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So here's the deal. I have made the decision. Well, for now, I've made the decision, right? Because this is another one that I'm second guessing, even though I know deep in my heart, this has to be done. I have to sell my house and I have to downside for a variety of reasons, obviously, mostly financial. I've talked about before that my income is dropping and I am not going to stick my head in the sand, but I can't. So a few days ago, I saw a townhouse, needs a lot of work, but it fits a lot of my criteria. I felt like it was overpriced, so I really made a lowball offer. They said it's a motivated seller. Let's see what happens. So before the negotiation even started, since we were so far apart, I had a number in my head. This is it. I am not going above this. Okay. I kind of had done the math loosely, I might add. I have an idea of what the renovations would cost me. I know pretty much what I could comfortably afford, at least I'm guessing, because my income is up in the air. And I had my number. And after a full day of negotiating, we were still $10,000 apart. Now, as we know, in the course of price of homes that is today, in today's world and market, I guess depending on where you're located, but here in the Northeast, $10,000 isn't a lot. But my final offer was that price that I had decided I was willing to pay. And the seller said, well, this is their final offer. Again, $10,000 apart. I walked away. Thank you, but I withdraw my offer. And since then, what have I done? I've spent the rest of the last 24 hours negotiating with myself. Did I make a mistake? Should I just pay it? I mean, what if I never find another unit with, these 5 specifications that I must have? Will I regret this? What if someone else buys it? And then I realized this wasn't about the townhouse. I mean, of course it is, but this is something that I've been doing for years. And then I started thinking about all the places that this shows up in my life. I finally decide to take the trip, whatever that trip was in the past. And then I wonder, should I have really spent that money? I could have used that money somewhere else. This is too extravagant of me. Or, On another occasion, I'll say, oh, let me book the nicer hotel. Then I think, well, maybe I should stay somewhere cheaper. I'll come home and I'll calculate whether it was worth it. I have all these things going through my head every time I make a decision. And sometimes it could be something smaller, like a purchase that I made or I didn't make, right? I could make a purchase and then wonder, oh, should I have waited? Do I really need this? What if I found it cheaper? Or not making a purchase, just the opposite. I feel like we've all had those times where we didn't buy something for whatever reason, and oh, it sticks with you for years. I can think of so many things that I walked away from that I wish I hadn't. So I don't think that my problem is really making decisions. Although as a Libra, it's like it's always a balancing act and decision making is hard. And I have to say, what's funny is that I find myself I find it easier to make bigger decisions than smaller decisions, like what should I wear? What do I want to eat? Those kinds of things, which is ridiculous. But I think my problem isn't about making them, it's about trusting them. When I look back, I think, how much joy have I stolen from myself by continuing to question decisions I've already made? Do you do this? Is it with the big decisions or the everyday ones or both? Of course, the bigger decision, the bigger the decision, the louder the second guessing becomes. Whether with this townhouse, oh my goodness, I'm walking away. What if I came up 5,000 and they came down another 5,000? Am I really going to walk away for that $5,000? Does that make sense? That's what I'm thinking about today. Then there's my career. As I've mentioned, my income's going to be cut. Now I'm thinking, I'm 60, almost 63. Do I change careers? Do I do something else on my own? Do I stick it out? And there's all different variables that are playing into that decision. And this is really, well, I guess it is one of the biggest career decisions I'm ever going to make in my life, because I've only had 2 careers. I was a CPA for 10 years. And then when I moved to become an insurance agent for a big insurance company, I was only 30. So if it didn't work out, what would be the big deal? I could always go back to being a CPA. Well, at 63, I can't really say that. And here's the thing. If either option was obviously right, it would be hard. It would be easy. But neither option, in any of the cases of these big decisions, career and where I'm going to live, there's nothing obvious here. And the older I get, the more I realize that life rarely asks us to choose between right and wrong. Because, come on, for those of us ethical and moral people, that's fairly easy. Instead, life asks us to choose between good and good, hard and hard, one opportunity compared to another, one risk compared to a different risk. Maybe we're exhausting ourselves trying to find certainty when certainty doesn't exist. And I know that for me, that statement definitely rings true. I am oh gosh, I just want certainty so badly. It does. It makes everything so much easier. Even when that certainty is something that you don't like, at least you know exactly what you're dealing with. And that in turn makes these decisions easier. I can also think that I can relate this to how I feel or deal with my adult sons. They're both in their mid-20s, and every parent wants to protect their children. And I would probably say that I am overprotective. I hate to see them suffer, and I know that we all do that. I want to prevent their mistakes. And I see now as they're adults and they're making their own decisions, I try and insert my foot and my opinion as often as I feel is necessary, which of course I feel is pretty often. And I try to think back. My mother said something to me the other day. My mother's 84, and we were talking about this townhouse thing. I was getting kind of frustrated. And she said to me, I want you to stop and think as a mother. Would you in turn be sitting there thinking about all the things that they should be considering that maybe they're not? Because she was saying, well, did you ask about this? Does it have that? And I was getting frustrated, like, Mom, what do you think? I'm an idiot? Of course I did those things. But when she turned the tables, I realized, oh, yeah, now I see your point. You want to do anything to make it easier for your kid, prevent any mistakes that they make. But honestly, I've realized, or I'm coming to realize, that when you do that, because I did baby them, and I feel because of that, it's harder for them to make their own decisions, or they're always looking to me. And even though they've had a lot of adversity, each of them in different ways, and a lot of difficult things happen in their lives, obviously losing their dad. And even before my husband died, he was not in the best of shape and dealing with mental illness and all of those things, that the rest of their lives have been pretty cushy. Well, at least for my youngest son, not so much for my older son. But anyhow, I've realized my job isn't to make every decision for them. I have to learn to trust that they're capable. And they might not, or not might, they will not choose perfectly. It's not that they will never struggle, because they're capable of handling life. And they've shown this to me time and time again. They learn, they recover, they grow, they figure it out. Just like you and I, just like us. So if I can believe that about my sons, why is it so hard to have that belief in myself? I always thought trusting myself meant believing that I'd make the right decision. And now I'm thinking maybe it's something different, and I have to change my mindset to reflect this. Maybe it's about trusting that if I made a mistake, that I'd recover. If something didn't work out, I'll adapt. And if life surprises me, as it has time and time again, I'll figure it out. Because this is what I've done, and I know this is what you've done your entire life. Confidence doesn't come from predicting the future, because none of us can do that. It comes from believing in the person walking into it. That's a huge difference. Trusting yourself. Trust in yourself that one way or another, you will figure it out. You don't need to trust the outcome. You just need to trust in you. So this week, I'm going to challenge you to notice when you reopen a decision that you've already made. Big or small, right? It could be a purchase, a conversation, a parenting decision, career, vacation. Instead of asking, did I make the right decision? Ask, can I trust the person who made it? Which obviously is you. And then let it go. Not because you know it will all work out, because you've already done your homework. You've made your choice. So now you need to choose peace. As I'm recording this, I still don't know how this townhouse story ends. Maybe they'll call back. Maybe they'll say, this is crazy, over $10,000. They don't want to lose this buyer, being me. And maybe they won't. And I really trust that if they don't come back and meet my final, then it just wasn't meant to be. There'll be another house, and that's okay. Because this week, I realized something. The goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty. It's not about making perfect decisions. The goal is to stop stealing today's peace by trying to predict tomorrow. I've spent a lot of my life asking, what if? What if I did this? What if I did that? Did I make the right decision? What am I doing to myself? Instead, it's time to ask a different question. Do I trust myself enough to handle whatever comes next? And I think the answer is yes. Not because I'll always get it right, but because every single challenge that I've faced has taught me something. Every setback has made me stronger. Every unexpected detour has shaped who I am today. And maybe that's what trust really is. Not confidence in the outcome, confidence in ourselves. Because maybe we don't need to know how the story ends. Maybe we just need to trust that we'll know how to rewrite or write our next chapter. And I can say with confidence that both you and I know how to do that. Okay, that's what I've got for you for this week. Can't wait to talk to you again next week. I would love to hear if this resonated with you. So as always, DM me on Instagram at debbie.r.weiss. Shoot me an email at debbie@debbierweiss.com. And go out there and instead of saying, maybe I can, yes, you can.